Hello everyone and welcome to the first of our series of BASIS webinars. Thanks for joining us today, and it's the first of a series of 4 different webinars we're doing over the winter months. Now I hope you can all hear me okay, and you can see the slideshow that I've got presented in front of me. We are having one slight technical issue today in that one of our presenters unfortunately can't get into the meeting as a presenter at the minute. So we're trying to resolve that as quick as we can, and while our other presenter, Lucy, today, while she's doing her section, I'll be on the phone trying to resolve that, and we'll try and get Richard back if we can. So I'm sorry about that, but we are trying our best. It is our first webinar that we're doing, and we're using Microsoft Teams that we've not used too much before. So it is a few teething problems, but we'll try our best, and we hope you still enjoy it today. Now, just some housekeeping before we start. Firstly, as we've said, there's a BASIS CPD point available for this event, and that, because you provided your account number when you registered for the event, that will be automatically allocated. It won't be tomorrow, maybe it'll be towards the end of next week probably, once we've sorted all the attendance register out and things like that. But there's no need to submit for points or anything like that. The other thing is there's a Q&A box available. If you've got any questions during the event, then please type them into there. I'll either respond, type back to you, or we'll have a Q&A session at the end to discuss them. So first of all, I'm going to just go through a few slides and kind of talk about sustainability and what that means. And the theme for all the 4 webinars we're going to run over the winter months is all about sustainability. So what sustainability means is it's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And sustainability is such a buzzword at the minute, and we can think, oh, that's what everyone's focused on, but actually this definition was created by the United Nations in 1987, so that's over 30 years we've had that definition and we're still using it today. So it's not a new thing to think about, but it's never been more important. And like I say, it's never been more important. And this is from the United Nations website, and they've got 17 sustainability goals. And what's great for UK farmers and UK advisors is that achieving food security and promoting sustainable agriculture is still one of the 17 goals. And it's not just focused on protecting the environment and all aspects like that. Kind of food security and sustainable food production is still at the heart of having a sustainable world, which is great to see. And I've just put some examples here, as we're still going to need to produce high quality fresh produce, high quality potatoes, high quality crops into the future. But we need to make it so our generations in the future can still produce those crops forevermore, forever, for every generation in the future. And what do they need to do that? Well, they need soil to grow it in, nutritious, healthy soil that water can infiltrate through, that will hold water content. And I'm hoping, and then, sorry, I had a Q&A and I was just hoping it might have been our presenter saying that he'd managed to resolve his issues, but I don't think it is. And the other important thing is we need to maintain our ecosystem food webs and life cycles. We need pollinators to pollinate some of our crops. We need beneficials to control our pests. And we need a huge number of different animals and invertebrates like this to support these key wildlife species that everyone's concerned about, barn owls as an example. Now, I struggled to get an image that kind of encapsulated climate change, but I thought this one showed we're protecting the whole landscape, and what's important is we need to work towards net zero agriculture to ensure that we have a stable climate and we can still farm sustainably in the same area of the world. We're not getting increased desertification, we're not getting more extreme weathers. We need to kind of maintain the climate in the current form that it is to support sustainable agriculture. And finally, this is kind of showing about protecting our watercourses and the quality of our water. So whether that's sustainable storage of plant protection products, whether that's preventing soil erosion, the quality of our water has been a really important feature of government policy for years now, and kind of still protecting that and enhancing that even, and from current levels, is important to maintain the quality of life for future generations. But what's really important, I think, for our members and BASIS as an organisation is that farmers and advice is going to be absolutely key for maintaining sustainability in all of these areas. And advice as we move into a new government guidance and new government schemes, such as ELMS, as we move away from the EU, as we move towards net zero farming, farmers and growers are going to need advice and knowledge to be able to implement changes on their farm to have a sustainable future. So what's going to be involved in our sustainability series? Firstly, we're going to be talking about sustainable crop protection, which is the title of today's webinar. We're then going to be talking about sustainable soils. As we saw at the start, it's one of the most important aspects we've got to maintain. We're then going to be talking about sustainable storage of both fertilisers and plant protection products. As we're talking about, so important for protecting our watercourses and the quality of our drinking water. And finally, I wanted to keep calling everything sustainable, but I couldn't get net zero farming into a snappy sustainable title, so I just called it sustainable agriculture. And in this final webinar we were going to do at the end of winter, we're going to talk about how we get to net zero farming and the really ambitious aims of organisations like the NFU on how we reach that. So, all being well, we're going to have 3 speakers today. We've got Richard Heady, hopefully, once we've resolved any issues, who's going to talk about using IPM on his farm. And Richard's a Voluntary Initiative Champion, and he's going to talk about his experiences. We've also got Lucy Bates, who's technical manager at Leaf, and she's going to kind of talk about how we integrate integrated pest management into the Leaf's theory on integrated farm management. And then finally, I'm going to summarise at the end where I talk about the importance of IPM within BASIS, both in our training courses and for our professional register members. So I'm going to pass over to Lucy now while I try and get Richard online. And Lucy's going to share her screen now and talk you through her part of her presentation.
Okay, Greg, is that working as a slide? Can you see the first slide up there? Yep, as a full slide. Fantastic. Yep. Right, ready to roll. Good afternoon. Hello, people. Thank you ever so much to Greg and BASIS for inviting me here today. It's a really exciting time in agronomy. It's always an exciting time in agronomy, I'm sure you'll agree. My name's Lucy Bates. I came to Leaf exactly a year ago from this week as ELMS project coordinator, and then this autumn I stepped into the role of technical manager. So prior to this, I've been working in arable agronomy in Wiltshire, a long-time part-time study for the last couple of years of that at Harper for an MSc in agroecology. So I've been BASIS registered as a FACTS qualified advisor since 2017, and I have a particular interest in the production of thatching straw. Just allow me to. Okay, so this afternoon I'm going to give you a brief talk on how IPM fits into integrated farm management. So how does integrated pest management fit into integrated farm management? So integrated farm management as IFM to Leaf, and they're going to talk about Leaf's application of IPM and IPM in the Leaf Mark Assurance Scheme, and then in particular the IPM planning aspect of this. So a little bit about Leaf to start with. It was set up in 1991 by Caroline Drummond, who still is to this very day our CEO, and she's also now an MBE. And Leaf essentially does what it says on the tin. It links positive farming outcomes with positive environmental outcomes. We focus on win-wins between productive land management and thriving ecosystems on which they ultimately depend. And here we are looking at our hot off the press new 10-year strategy, giving you the most up-to-date wording of our mission and vision. So I won't read that out to you. I'll leave you to read them to yourself. And indeed, the jazzed up IFM wheel with a whole new colour scheme. This was revealed at our annual conference only last week. So this is as our last 10-year strategy from 2011 to 2021 draws to a close very successfully. We're now looking at the next 10 years, and this is how we're framing it. So we've got an increased emphasis on the overriding principle of circularity overall within the system as a whole. You might be more familiar, however, with this more monochrome version of the IFM wheel. So we've got 9 aspects of farm management, all inherently interrelated, 3 primary pillars of work. So we've got public engagement. So as an example, we coordinate Open Farm Sunday, which this year was a double dose of online Farm Sunday. I hope some of you might have had a chance to make it there. And the School Link Up Initiative Farmer Time. Developing market opportunities, we run the Leaf Mark Assurance Scheme, which I'll be talking about a little bit more later, and knowledge generation and exchange, one small part of which is what I'm doing here today. So integrated farm management looks at a whole farm system. There's no one crop or land parcel or enterprise in isolation from the others in the business. It's site specific, no one size fits all. It can look good, can look very different in different places, on different soils and for different operations. Through IFM, attention to detail for incremental but continuous improvement brings significant gains in environmental, social and economic sustainability. Theme of the webinar series. The practical application of this, which at the end of the day is where it's at, is based on a cycle of review, plan and do. Evaluation is key to informing action, and if you can measure and record something, you can monitor and manage and hopefully improve on it. The Leaf Sustainable Farming Review is an online self-assessment tool used by members to do just this on an annual basis, with inputted data, in some cases supply chain specific, benchmarked across other users and over time. So a really unique attribute of Leaf is our network. We have 40 working farms, all of whom practice integrated farm management and act as demonstration farms, scattered from the island of Jersey all the way up to the Scottish Highlands. They host trials, events, talks and tours, primarily for peer-to-peer farmer-to-farmer learning, but also for advisors, researchers, policymakers. In 2019, for instance, 9,528 people visited across the demonstration farm network, of whom 1,820 were farmers. It's been a bit different in 2020, as you can imagine, but we've kept up communication through a series of virtual field days on IPM, as it turns out, and 2 virtual launches of new demonstration farms. We've also held regular network events, including to contribute to the Elms co-design process through one of our 4 tests and trials that we're running as part of that DEFRA programme. So these demonstration farms are mutually supported by 11 innovation centres. You can see the list on the left there. I think that's a pretty cool list myself. Whose research and development of best practice in sustainable farming informs the continuous development of everything we do at Leaf. So as well as this network, we work together with a wide range of organisations, including the AHDB, Catchment Sensitive Farming, Voluntary Initiative, Innovative Farmers and Agroecology, to develop and promote IPM practices and translate this into practical, realistic and achievable solutions. So how does IPM fit into this IFM system? Obviously under the banner of crop health and protection, but you won't be surprised to hear that crop health and protection is an integral part of the whole wheel. It contains right at its centre the informed use of all available tools to prevent pests and diseases or their treatment from becoming a problem that is detrimental to either productivity or the biodiversity on which it ultimately depends in a healthy agro-ecosystem. So a well-managed crop, farm and landscape are all part of the same picture, and being the sensible people that you are, this will sound more than obvious, I'm sure. But as an agronomist, where your inherent focus is the pest management aspect of crop health and protection, where this is what you're employed to do, to fit that into the landscape picture, when sometimes it feels like the landscape really is just out to get you, is not always as intuitive as it sounds. But ultimately, as some of what seemed like simpler solutions become less of an option, integrating landscape level strategies for pest management to your IPM planning and recognising the impact of your recommendations on the effectiveness of those solutions becomes to look more and more like common sense. So, how does IPM look on the ground for leaf? Firstly, we recognise that IPM is already happening across the farm's landscape, that's what agronomy is. It's coming up with the right combination of strategies for the individual situation and circumstance. There might be a reduced range of actives, it seems, available, but chemistry was only ever one part of the story. IPM looks, of course, like spiders in the stubble eating aphids. It looks like connectivity of habitats, of diverse margins, and of beetle banks housing beneficials. It looks like a variety selection for resistance or tolerance, and it looks like cultivation decisions made based on consideration of weather, rotation, and risk. For us, it looks like collaboration with the Crop Protection Association, the NFU, and the Voluntary Initiative to produce a guidance booklet for use on a farm to help support decision making. This is available to download via our website, or if you get in touch with me afterwards, I'd be happy to send you on a copy. It looks like a basis certificate in integrated farm management, which includes IPM within the syllabus, and an advisor and consultant pilot that's developing a CPD route that supports ongoing training and development for agronomists to stay abreast of innovation in our demonstration farms and coming out of our innovation centres and feed into the ongoing development of this process. It's two-way communication. It looks like having a policy and making a plan and having the analytical skills to review and remake that plan. A few stats on leaf mark here as background to why I'm going to offer up our experience of planning and reviewing as an example of taking integrated pest management forwards in your practice and for your clients. So I'm not going to read out these stats. I'm going to assume you can read them for yourself. But essentially, this is a whole farm environmental assurance scheme, full member of ISEAL, which audits a farm according to a set of metrics laid out in its standards. Standards document regularly reviewed and updated to reflect best practice, and we're currently on version 15.0. The leaf mark operates as an add-on to baseline assurance schemes such as Red Tractor or Global Gap. So to become leaf mark, a farmer must already be compliant across all enterprises with one of these baseline schemes. So the audits, which are independent, are often carried out together. It's currently bigger in horticulture than it is in arable in the UK. It's required by Waitrose and a Plan A attribute for Marks and Spencer's fresh produce suppliers. Part of the reason for this may well be that, as we know, horticulture has been sensitised to integrated pest management some time ahead of arable. So we've lost actives a fair old way before possibly it could be said that we did in arable. And 43% of UK produced fruit and veg is currently to leaf mark standard, even if you might not always see it as such labelled due to the mix of supply to major retailers. Increased recognition in arable, however, really is taking off. We've got Jordan's Farm Partnership and Bird's Eye Vining Peas, both requiring grower participation, and is becoming increasingly relevant as the imperative for evidencing IPM at field scale gathers momentum. So the standard requires that there's an implemented crop health and protection plan, including reference to IPM. So these are areas in which businesses are required to demonstrate consideration in order to achieve leaf mark certification. Data collected from the Leaf Sustainable Farming Review, completion of which is a requisite of leaf mark. So all leaf mark businesses complete the Sustainable Farming Review, although it's also available to other members who aren't leaf mark. So that's how the crossover happens there. But this shows us that in 2019, 52% of leaf mark businesses were carrying out best practice in all 8 areas of IPM. This doesn't mean that they're not still engaged in the continuous improvement that's really integral to IFM, but that they can show that they're taking into consideration and taking action on all 8 areas. And just to remind us what those are, according to the Sustainable Use Directive, I've popped them in there on the right. So a real positive knock-on effect of having all these plans in place across leaf mark businesses is that it acts as an indicator for the industry compliance with the Sustainable Use Directive and progress in the really widely accepted mandate to upscale IPM practice. We're hearing about this pretty much everywhere at the moment. As with the equivalent voluntary initiative IPM plans that have provided really strong opportunity for uptake, I'm really hoping we get to hear from Richard shortly about his voluntary initiative experience, because it's certainly very, very strong equivalence with leaf, and it's important to many of our farmers. And of which we keenly await imminent sector-specific updates. So there's an update coming for the voluntary initiative planning, which we feel will be really positive to just stay abreast of this wave of realisation about how important IPM is for sustainable ongoing crop production and crop protection. So along with these VI plans, it really helps to retain credibility and evidence of good practice in the industry. So we've got this little graph down here. So it's showing the annual metric, which is collated by the Pesticide Forum as one of the indicators of sustainable use of pesticides, and the acreage covered by VI plans in blue and leaf plans in orange gives evidence of progress that ultimately contribute to the retention of actives for appropriate use. A finding from this year's review of evidence on IPM by DEFRA is that leaf was identified as a key initiative having a positive impact on the adoption of IPM in the UK. This seems to us a good thing, and it fits in well into the wider wheel and the wider mindset of integrated farm management. There's a transferable value here. There's so many reasons for doing this well. Good IPM planning supports you in your decision support, in your resistance management and retention of actives. It supports your clients in cross compliance. It can help with gross margins. Health and safety executive, continuous professional development. You get 2 basis points for filling in the Leaf Sustainable Farming Review. Keeps you abreast of legislative requirements, and who knows, it might even smooth the way into elms. We'll see. So to summarise, IPM is integral to integrated farm management and to leaf. No one size fits all is what our experience tells us, and IPM requires a landscape scale perspective in order to succeed. Leaf Mark Assurance both certifies a high level of IPM awareness, and it also contributes to its development. And IPM planning and practice has transferable benefit. So evidencing IPM is of benefit to all involved, and I encourage you to do so. If you'd like any more information about Leaf's experience in this area, please don't hesitate to get in touch via our website, and my email is here. So thank you very much, Greg, and I'm hoping we now have Richard.
Well, unfortunately, I think you might be disappointed on that side of it, because we're still struggling to get hold of Richard, unfortunately. I think, amazingly, even though I've invited him as a presenter, he's managing to view the event, but he can't participate. So, it's a real shame, and we really appreciate Richard joining us today. So I don't want to waste all the hard work he's done and the time and effort he's put in, so I am going to still go through his slides and his information. Fortunately, if any of you don't know Richard Heady, he's quite infamous on Twitter. He's Heady's Farm on Twitter, and he's very good at videos. So unfortunately, in his presentation, there is a lot of videos. I'm just going to stop sharing a second, actually, and I just need to make sure the videos will work, to make sure it's all going to work. That's better. So you should be able to hear the videos now. I've just had to change the settings slightly, but I am still going to go through Richard's slides and just show you what he was going to talk about. It's such a shame it's not working, and I do really apologise for that. But yeah, technology sometimes does let us down. So we're going to talk about the positive impact that IPM can have on your farm. And Richard is a mixed farmer from Buckinghamshire, and like I say, he's really interesting to follow on social media. And I think he's a great champion for not just for the voluntary initiative, which is another role that he carries out, but for farming in general. and for informing the general public and the wider society about the great work that UK farmers do and also the challenges that they face. So I'd really recommend following him on social media. And as I said, he's a Voluntary Initiative Champion. And if no one knows about this, the Voluntary Initiative, they've set up a network of champions. So that's farmers and advisors, working for different organisations, independents, working for companies, all who follow the same principles of promoting integrated pest management. And thanks to Neil at the VI for sorting out this presentation. And like I say, I really do appreciate Richard's effort that he's put in for this. So it's going to be a bit more about the Voluntary Initiative, and the Voluntary Initiative has been around for a long time now, and as you'll all know, it promotes huge number of different great initiatives such as testing of pesticide application and protecting water, and finally what we're talking about today, encouraging IPM. So Lucy spoke a lot about this and how IPM is involved in integrated farm management. We're actually planning to have Richard on first, which would have made a bit more sense because we're talking about the principles a bit more here. But as you can see, this is based on Sustainable Use Directive guidance, and it's saying using all available plant protection methods and integration of appropriate measures to discourage the development of weeds, pests and diseases. And still using pesticides, but only when economically and ecologically justified. And I think that's a really important part, is that we're using all the measures that we can, but the use of pesticides where required to promote sustainable food development is still there. So Richard spoke a bit about why kind of IPM is important to him and why he thought the UK was important for the UK farmers in general. And as he says here, we need to keep the current range of chemicals that seem to be dwindling all the time. We need to show the general public that we do use them responsibly, and promote the evidence for the environmental considerations that farming follows. Obviously, all farmers will agree with this one, reducing input costs and making their organisations financially sustainable. Whatever our members think that pesticides don't come cheap, especially a lot of the newer products, and we're losing a lot of the cheaper, older products, so it's becoming more and more challenging, and that's always important for farmers. And also, which is really important, interesting, is improving his soils and the farm environment, and that's what we're going to be talking about in a lot of the seminars later on in this series. So it's really interesting. I looked through these slides that Richard sent over, and this was a great example of the kind of publicity that's out there that kind of tries to villainize almost farming in the UK. And I don't know if you've managed to read through this story, but it's talking about all the cute farmland animals. I'm sure you'll all like that cute badger there, and he's talking about how it's poison that the farmers are spraying, and run away quick, and you can only run back into the poison area of the field. And it's really interesting because a lot of these organisations have a lot of publicity, but we don't get the chance to kind of get out there and shout about how we are using crop protection products sustainably and we are protecting the environment. And the last thing farmers and agronomists want to do is go out there spraying pesticides and harming the wider environment. That's not what we're here to do. Oh, so I'm glad I've got a break. So I've got Richard doing a video here. So this is just a great example of kind of what work Richard does, getting the message out there about why we have to use plant protection products sometimes and what challenges farmers face. So hopefully if I play this, you'll all be able to hear it. Oh, let me just go back one. Hold on.
Hi, so today I am spreading slug pellets on this field. So slug pellets are a molluscicide and slugs are mollusks, so the idea is to kill the slugs. So we don't do this lightly, it's not something we like to do, but there is a need. So they have been chomping on this field of wheat. So I can show you down here, that leaf has been chomped off and you can see some eating there and some grazing here. So they're eating the crop, and if they carry on doing this, we could lose the crop. They did eat one of our crops last year and we had to re-drill it in the spring. So I'm trained to do this job. I've got a PA4S, which is a special slug pelleting license, which means I've taken the test and qualified and got the experience and the know-how to do this job properly. So we didn't just go straight away and decide to spread these slug pellets on here. First, we put down a slug trap just to double check that there isn't slugs here that we need to treat. So we put a block of wood down and we put some chicken food underneath it. And we came back the next day, we lifted it up and we can see there's a lot of slugs under there eating the chicken food, and they're over the threshold, so we need to treat them. So if I just quickly show you the bit of kit. So we've got a spinning disc here on the back of a quad bike, and that is spreading these little pellets across 12 meters of the field. And then we're going up and down to spread them across the whole field, especially the damaged areas, to kill the slugs. So these are ferric phosphate slug pellets. So we used to use ones called botaldehyd, but there were problems with water quality, with it leaching out the soil and getting into streams. So we are now moving to ferric phosphate, which is a lot safer. There shouldn't be any water quality problems with that. Cheers.
Okay, so that was a great example of some of the videos that Richard produces for social media, and I hope that shows how explains it in really simple but clear terms to the wider public. Why do we use slug pellets? That I'm sure the general public will just see a quad bike zooming up and down the fields, flinging those blue pellets all over the field, and might be concerned about it. And he really explains it in such a great way and shows how we are using IPM. Now he's just put a graph on this slide, so it's not the easiest one for me to wing it about, but I think what he's trying to refer to here is kind of, I know Richard's moving towards a more conservation agriculture approach, and kind of showing the reduce the costs and the margin relating to no-till versus conventional. So again, I'm not 100% sure about what he's referring to on this slide, but I think what he's trying to show is that what integrated pest management went into growing this crop of wheat kind of in front of us. And so the first one is an example of cultural control, how he's using spring cropping. The second part is how he's changing his cultivation strategy to potentially benefit the environment, so direct drilling leading to reduced herbicide use. More beneficial weed growth on the margins, because he's not ploughing all the weed seeds down potentially, mycorrhizal fungi, and also the moisture retention in the spring, and trying to promote increased yields by changing his farm management while also reducing inputs such as fertilizers or fuel use that will all impact the environment in the long term. And then finally, he's talking about using cover crops before his spring wheat here, so reducing compaction, maintaining that soil structure and soil life, as I spoke about at the start. That's going to be the next topic on our next seminar. And then finally, nutrient release and moisture retention, both for reducing inputs and increasing yield potential. And actually, as we've seen, sustainable farming is increasing yield potential. It's growing more from less. That's what it's all about, and it's not about not farming and not producing high yielding crops. Thankfully, you've got another video, and this is a great example, another good example of where Richard talks about how he combats blackgrass using an IPM approach.
Hi, so this is a new grass lay, and they had such a bad time of drilling last autumn that the grass just really didn't establish very well. We didn't get the conditions good enough for the seed, and basically the main thing that was in the seed bank from the other years is blackgrass. So check this out, it's absolutely unbelievable just to see the blackgrass. So one of the reasons this field is going down to grass is because of the blackgrass problem. We've had some bad oilseed rape crops in here and they've left it open for blackgrass to reseed. So hopefully we can set this down to grass for maybe 5 years. We can kind of get on top of the blackgrass. But this year we're going to have to see whether we make silage of it and make sure we compost some manure that's been through the cattle, just so that we can try and kill off the blackgrass heads, or we've got to top it fairly soon before the seeds become viable. Just go to show how efficient blackgrass is at colonising an area, how each one of these seed heads can produce so many seeds, and they can sit dormant for 7 years or so. And when the time and conditions are right and they've got the space, just pop up and go mad. Just wish that wheat and barley were this easy to grow. Cheers. Never seen so much black grass in my life.
Now, I'm sure you can all sympathise with that video, and we've all had challenging situations like that. And I think what's great is that Richard's not showing the perfect side of farming, and he really is showing the challenges that we all face with IPM and weed problems such as blackgrass. And I think a lot of the wider public don't understand these challenges affect UK farmers, and this is what we have to deal with, and is why we use products. And the classic of this would be glyphosate. How not having glyphosate would make controlling infestations such as that so much more difficult. So he's talking a bit here about his silage, and I think we've got another video here. So we're just showing there kind of how he's changed it using integrated pest management and using his rotation to sustainably produce crops. I mean, he's still producing really high yielding silage there. And I know Richard's a mixed farmer, so that's beneficial for him especially, but also using that whilst getting on top of his weed problems. And that's what we're trying to show: sustainable food production whilst still controlling pests, weeds and diseases. Now, this will be a really interesting one for everyone as we move towards elms and the use of stewardship options. I know this will be talking about a countryside stewardship option, but as we move to elms, kind of integrating that into our rotations and our integrated farm management is going to become more and more important.
Hi, so this is our countryside stewardship legume fallow. And as you can see, and here, it's full of grasshoppers and butterflies. So this field was full of blackgrass when we put it down to this, and this kind of lay has choked out all the blackgrass, and it's actually providing habitat. And all this clover is hopefully putting nitrogen back in the soil. So when we bring this back into our arable rotation, we'll have to use less bag fertiliser and take more of the natural stuff that the legumes have sucked out of the air and put back into the soil. Cheers.
So like I say, a great example of how Richard's using integrated pest management combined with government grants and the countryside stewardship scheme at the minute, but I'm sure the same will apply for when the new elm scheme comes into play. Kind of why he's used it on that field: bad blackgrass, heavy clay, poor soil structure, and then what benefits he's getting: his payments, reducing costs and reducing risk, adding nutrients to the soil, adding organic matter, benefiting wildlife and pollinators and beneficials, and selling silage, still making extra profit from it, but also breaking those pest, weed and disease life cycles. And it's a great way to see how identified a problem field and then using what's available and thinking slightly outside the box to really get on top of it and benefit himself, the wider environment and his farm in the long term. And again, another example of things Richard's looking at is things like companion cropping. And I know this is shown in some cereal crops here, but it's something even more people are looking at in oilseed rape at the minute. And I think we're going to come on to his challenges with, we're going to talk, this is a great video showing how Richard gets all his family involved in the farm as well.
My Sunday activity, I've got the team roguing. So we're putting out some wild oats from this barley. We did, look, you can see the swallows as well. They're dashing about looking for bugs. Here's another one. There we go.
Now, I'm sure you'd all be pretty pleased if you could get your kids and partners involved in a lockdown activity of hand roguing wild oats. But it's just another example of that is still integrated pest management at its heart. And even though people have been doing it for years, not to forget those kind of old strategies. And I think this is the final video, and it's a really interesting one, talking about the limitations of integrated pest management.
Hi, and today I'm combining what will probably be our last ever field of oilseed rape. So here it is, and it's really poor. A lot of weeds, not many seeds. So basically, this has been nailed by the flea beetle. So we haven't been able to grow a good crop of oilseed rape since the neonicotinoids were banned. We've tried numerous things. We've not given up on it. We've tried creating a really good seed bed to get the seeds going. That didn't work. We tried direct drilling. That didn't work. We tried companion cropping, growing other crops with it to try and get the flea beetle away from the crop. That didn't work. And this crop here, we tried sprinkling the seed into the previous crop. So we blew this oilseed rape into a standing crop of wheat last summer. And then when we combined the wheat, the rape was already growing, so we've got a head start. It looked really good. It looked like a really strong crop all through the winter. It didn't have much nibbling from the flea beetle on the leaves. But come the spring, I had so many larvae, maggots from the flea beetle in the stems, it just rotted out and they just haven't produced much oilseed rape at all. So this is pretty much the same case all over the country. A lot of people giving up oilseed rape because it's no longer viable for their businesses. So a lot of the oilseed rape that is coming into the country, the rapeseed oil, the vegetable oil, that is all imported and that has all been grown using neonicotinoids. So the world is no better off, really. The bees in general aren't any better off, even though they might be better off in the UK. The other worrying thing is that the use of palm oil has probably increased, and we all know how good that is from a sustainability point of view. But yeah, sad to see it go. Cheers.
No, I think that is a fantastic video that summarises the frustrations and challenges that agronomists and farmers face with oilseed rape at the minute. And I know actually this year the crops in general are looking a bit better, so it is positive to know. But I know there's still challenges in some areas of the UK, and I think it's great if that message can get out to the general public, because I think it's so easy for newspapers to talk about banning neonicotinoids and the damage it does to bees, as Richard said there. But actually, what is the knock-on effect of that? Importing oilseed rape, importing other oil-based products, reducing food security in the UK, reducing UK farm input, affecting UK farm businesses. And it's a really interesting case that he can put forward there, and the frustrations that he kind of feels. And I think that it's a really great story to get out there. So here's a few things Richard thinks he's going to put forward into the future, and it's great to see that he's still learning, still adapting, and still looking at ways to improve his farm management and use integrated pest management more effectively. And it's really great to see that final one, which I spoke about earlier, is taking advantage of the ELM options and getting paid for great IPM solutions. Such a positive mindset, and think about it, there's a lot of worry and concern about ELMs at the minute. Everyone's unsure how it's going to look and how people are going to benefit from it. But I think Richard's saying here is, right, this is an opportunity. I'm doing all this great work, I'm following IPM. Let's take advantage of it, and let's make my farm more sustainable for the future using the payments from that. So I hope I've managed to do Richard justice there. I'm sure he would have explained it much better than I did, but I really didn't want to you all to miss out on some of those great videos and some of the messages he's getting out there. The final thing I'd like to say is that I think as advisors and as farmers in the UK, we do such a fantastic job of producing sustainable food and protecting the environment. Yes, we've got challenges and we've got changes we'll have to make in the future, but actually let's get the message out there to the general public. This is what we're doing at the minute, and this is why we do certain things. This is why we have to use pesticides sometimes. This is why we need glyphosate. But this is what we're doing to try and protect the environment in the wider scheme of things. So I'd also really tell you to go and have a look on Twitter and follow Heady's farm. It's such a inspirational kind of story he's trying to tell, and it's great for a bit of revision as well before any basis exams. So I'm gonna, as I said, we did it in the wrong order, so I'm going to flick through Lucy's slides and I'm just going to summarise kind of where IPM fits within basis. So, and then we'll have a quick session of Q&A before we get to 5 o'clock. So hopefully you won't ask me too many questions about Richard's section, otherwise I'll have to get into text me the answers. So firstly, I'm going to say I had a look and I thought, right, IPM, where's it written into BASIS? So I searched in all our syllabuses where it uses the word either IPM or Integrated Pest Management. Obviously, it's the foundation of all we do with agronomy, so it was in the Foundation Award in Agronomy syllabus. As Lucy mentioned earlier, we run a joint venture course called the BASIS Leaf Integrated Farm Management course, and obviously it's always part of that, and that's a great introduction to leaf and integrated farm management if you want to learn more about it. Certificate in Crop Protection IPM, the main BASIS certificate that most people will know, and it's got it in the name there. Beta Conservation Management, obviously all aspects of protecting the environment and conservation management involve IPM in the long term, and yeah, IPM's all part of that course. The Plant Protection Award, one of our more advanced courses, that looks specifically at the more whole farm approach. So IFM, like Lucy's been speaking about, it refers to that. It takes the certificate in crop protection one step further to more developed theories such as that. Our advanced crop modules also mention it. Again, similar if you're focusing around IPM use in specific crops such as cereals or potatoes or sugar beet. And then finally, it's all brought together in the BASIS diploma in agronomy, and pretty much apart from the soil and water and fertilizer courses, every course of part of that mentions IPM and is focused on IPM. And it just shows what an integral part of agronomy and BASIS IPM is. And then finally, in the last year, since the 1st of June, IPM's actually become a specific category within our professional register CPD points system. So now you can collect IPM points. So some events will be awarded points specifically focused around IPM. An example is this webinar today, that you get 1 point IPM for attending today. And it just emphasises the importance of BASIS focus on that, continuing to develop your knowledge around this area. Crop protection and understanding the products available is still important, but it's just as important as personal development, plant nutrition, application practices, integrated pest management. All our points categories we think are equally important for people to continue to learn and develop around. Now, again, I apologise for the technical issues we had. And it's also been our first webinar, so I really hope you've enjoyed it. If anyone's got any feedback, then I'd be more than happy to hear it. Either put it into the question and answer section here or into the message section, and then it'd be great for the future. And I hope you can all attend in the next webinars over the winter months, and more information will be sent out about that over the next few weeks. We've got one more before Christmas, I think. So I'm just going to look in the Q&A now, and I'm going to have a look if there's any specific questions I want that we can cover. So if just give me a minute, I'll just have a look through, and then I'll bring Lucy in if there's any that she would like to.
I'm afraid I've been answering them as we've gone along. I have been putting forwards a few little thoughts for ones that have come in the meantime, but there are a couple I can't answer. But we seem to have some input on slug pellets. There's a question about whether ferric phosphates are quicker broken down by the weather than metaldehyde, and we've got some team input saying the good quality ferric phosphate will persist as long as metaldehyde. And we know metaldehyde is on its way out, and the rain fastness of slug pellets is determined by formulation. So it's about the process of the pellet, not about the active. Yeah. So.
I'd 100% agree on that. Yeah, we're talking about the persistence and the quality of pellets. I'd say maybe 3 years ago, nearly all the ferric phosphate pellets were the kind of more expensive, higher quality formulations, the pasta-based formulations, while the metaldehyde was kind of available in pasta-based and bran dry pellets. But now ferric phosphate has become the prominent pellet. It's actually available in more types of formulations now, so you can get wet formulated pasta-based ferric phosphate, and you can also get dry processed bran-based ferric phosphate as well. So yeah, down to formulation more than the active ingredient from my knowledge, but I'm sure the slug pellet manufacturers would give you more information about that if you had anything specific about that. And yeah, I can see that Richard has replied to that, which I'm very grateful for.
So we've got going from the top. We've got a few questions that I think are really prescient, really appropriate questions about kind of where we're at right now. And one of them is from Simon saying, I passed my integrated crop management, so ICM course in 1998 at Harper Adams. That's 22 years ago. So we qualified, and the industry's been practicing integrated crop management and IPM for the last 20 years. For instance, blackgrass culture control. And I would say, Simon, that the industry's been practicing IPM forever. That's what farming is. Farming is thinking this through and doing the jigsaw. I think it's possible that over the last 50 years, I doubt many agronomists would argue with me in that the availability of chemistry has made this seem like the most appropriate option in most circumstances. I think as that availability is reduced and efficacy is reduced through resistance, possibly the imperative to really find a combination of solutions is returning.
Great answer, Lucy. I can also see there's been another question about about a market for grass and grazing. I know Richard spoke about that. He's a mixed livestock farmer, so has got that potential. I think what I'd say is there's absolutely no one-size-fits-all solution to problems such as blackgrass. And as you'll know, a classic of that will be you'll see on lighter land farms or silt farms where you've got potatoes and sugar beet in the rotation. It seems almost unfair sometimes because they've got so many more options for spring crops and almost keeps those crops in check. While if you're a heavy land farmer and struggle to grow crops such as that, you seem to have much fewer options. But absolutely, it's all about looking at your farm, getting good advice and seeing what suits your rotation, your local markets. It might be you've got a really good malting barley market nearby. You might have specific requirements for some of the quality spring wheats out there. You might have further north towards Scotland, you might have spring oats as a great option. It all depends on markets, availability, and looking at the options out there. And like we said, the Elms scheme and even the Countryside Stewardship scheme at the minute has got some fantastic options there for break crops such as those legume fallow breaks or enhanced stubble options, things like that you can integrate into your rotation. And yeah, definitely not one size fits all. Great example of how it could work on a farm like Richard's where you've got the livestock who can utilise the grass, but yeah, it's finding the solution for your farm.
I just am interested to see as well, there's coming in a kind of string of observations about the, I think it's not, to be honest, unrelated to the question about markets and about barley and grass. And we know there's agronomic benefits to grass, but if there's actually nothing to eat it, then it's really hard to justify those years out of the rotation. And I think in terms of oilseed rape, we've got some observations about you know, the fact that the oilseed rape that comes in from the Ukraine, from outside of Europe, even from Canada, might be GM or might indeed be still using neonicotinoid seed treatments that aren't any longer available here for some good reasons, can I hazard. But the market's that awareness within the market to drive choices. I think that's something, it's part of the landscape perspective. You know, this isn't something that happens just on farms or just in individual fields. This is something that is relevant to the whole of the situation. And I think that that's kind of a really important point, is that agronomy isn't isolated in its own silo. It is impacted and impacts on the bigger picture too. So yeah, I think that's really important conversation to keep having. And there's a message here saying, is there any data to support the allegation that palm oil use has gone up? I don't know. That's not a statistic that I personally have come across. I don't know if anybody would like to add in the sort of basis for that. But it's a complicated world out there, and people need, at the end of the day, that oilseed, the role in a national diet that an oilseed plays has to come from somewhere. So I'd be interested to learn more about that, I think. There's a question about advice and leaf advice. And I'd just like to sort of highlight that we do, on top of the IFM basis courses, we are like looking at an advisor and consultant pilot at the moment, whereby we're looking at a process where agronomists or other advisors can not just do the IFM course, but then have a mentor within LEAF and a sort of annual revision programme. So yes, stay in touch, keep your eyes peeled for that. I think there might well be a value for that, and hopefully as ELS gets rolled out, there'll be some element of recognition that integrated farm management ticks a lot of those boxes that are being pursued in that department.
We also seem to have had a lot of questions about slug control. Seems to be the hot topic today in slug pellets. So I don't know why that is particularly today, but we've had someone asking us some questions about applying in slug pellets, and I think what the really interesting point that I'd like to point out is the testing of the application equipment. So it's always got to be applied using a tested pesticide applicator. So whether that's obviously a slug pelleter, so whether that's attached onto the back of a bike or on the drill, the just most important thing to remember is legally is to make sure it's a tested slug pellet applicator. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to all the question and answer parts of Teams, and it'll be a much more polished approach for the next one. But we're going to wrap up there. I'm going to say thanks to Lucy, and I'm going to say a special thanks to Richard. I hope I really apologise that he wasn't able to present himself, but I hope I did him justice, and I hope you've all found it interesting. Like I say, your basis points will be allocated automatically. We just need to sort through the attendee list, comparing it to the registration list, and we'll sort that in the next few days. But thanks again for listening and contributing, and any feedback would be much appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here today, and look forward to the next in the series.
Cheers. Thanks, Lucy.